Julie, hello. Welcome to Curiosity Friday. So glad you're able to be with us today.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. First of all, congratulations to you, your husband, and your daughter Caroline, who graduated from OSU yesterday. Listen to me, last Sunday, with, if I have it
Yes,
right, a double major in the history of art and the Korean language. That's fabulous.
that- that's right. Yes, we're very pleased, and of course, not nearly as pleased as she is to be
I
done. So,
uh,
even with this strange semester,
oh,
it was a
well,
great accomplishment.
strange semester and strange time to be launching yourself into the larger world. I can barely only imagine.
Yes, yes, I'm sure it feels that way to her.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Julie, people may or may not know you. You're a member of our Spirit of Life choir. You are also an AP reporter at the Ohio State House. Is that right?
That's right. Well, I'm in the Chalice Choir, and
Oh, forgive me. I spoke
yeah,
wrong.
yeah, that's okay. But yes, and then I'm a journalist, and I work for the Associated Press downtown, usually downtown home office.
Okay. I think you're still
So,
with us. Okay, we're going to see. We're having technical issues today.
yep.
I don't think I've
Uh,
ever told you, you are the second AP reporter I've ever met. When I was an undergraduate, um, Antonin Scalia came through before he was confirmed for the US Supreme Court on a little speaking tour, and he spoke to my college. And I remember AP reporter was sitting next to me on the bleachers, and I kept looking over. How is this guy taking notes? How's this guy taking notes? Um, so
Truly,
confession time.
the most impressed anyone's ever been is when the second graders could see I could write cursive without looking. So,
Oh, that is a skill. And yes, do you take
taking notes without
shorthand?
looking.
What? I'm sorry, go on.
I have my own kind of shorthand. It's not real shorthand, but it's just sort of abbreviations and things I know. Like CO means county, and R means Republican, D means Democrat, that kind of stuff, just to
Terrific, terrific.
keep it short.
All right. And I don't want to forget that you were raised in First UU Columbus. You're a lifelong member, if I have that right. That,
I was, yes. My mother, Peggy Carr, she came to Columbus from Wintersville, Ohio, and went to Ohio State. Down on campus, she started going to the or what was then the Unitarian Church when it was back on campus. And she loved music too. And so she was in the choir. And then when they first built the building on Weisheimer, she was one of those early members.
oh, that's terrific.
My
That's
siblings
terrific.
and I all were raised in the church.
All right. Where are your siblings now? I realize I just don't know.
Oh, I have a couple sisters who are just retired professors. One, Amelia, is at she just retired from Allegheny, and my sister
Okay.
Glennis just retired from Bucknell. And I have a sister here locally who just retired as a nurse for the VA. And my
Wow.
brother George is up in Cleveland. He's a lawyer
Okay.
up there.
Okay. Quite a brood. That's terrific.
So, yeah, there were several of us.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Um, how did you get interested in journalism, Julie?
Um, Well, I feel like it's the best of all the things about myself. One being that I was always curious. I like a wide variety of things. I'm not much of a specialist, but more of a
Mhm.
generalist. And then also, I love to write. I love to ask questions. And within that big family of mine, I was always sort of a peacemaker sort. I always was curious of everybody's point of view and what they like their perspective on things. And so pulling all that together, and also knowing I can't accomplish a single thing if I don't have a deadline. It worked out pretty well.
Great. Oh, that's wonderful. Um, when I imagine, and this is going to be more telling of me than anybody else in the universe, when I imagined being in a career like journalism, I jump to a sense of getting jaded over time. You know, you see the same story d- what is your outlook? How do you, I don't know you as a person who seems jaded at all. So just want, I'll say that. Um, but how do you keep yourself fresh and to the extent that you do? I know that's
Well,
10 questions.
that's a good question. Yeah. In part, I feel like the fact that I've been a political reporter for so long and I've been interviewing and knowing well a lot of the people who are on both sides of the aisle has actually really helped during the era of Donald Trump,
Hmm.
when and as things have gotten so divided, because I just feel like I'm pretty used to it in a way that other people might not be
Okay.
used to spin and used to parties being at each other's throats and things that I've paid attention to for a long time, but that weren't always right in your face on the front page every day.
Okay.
So, I mean, some of it is that. The other thing is I just come at it from the point of view that everybody I'm talking to or seeing or covering at a protest or a rally is human. And, that's part of my Unitarian background is just everybody has worth and I want to hear what they have to say. And that really helps me, I think, stay, maintain my mental health, let's just say, and through a lot of interesting times.
um, Before I came to Columbus, when I was still in California, Arnold Schwarzenegger had been sworn in as governor. I can't say I voted for him, but one of the stories that I heard out of Sacramento was that he installed a smoking tent, a place where people could smoke cigars and gather no matter their party affiliation and hash things out. And while I'm not a cigar aficionado, I really appreciated that story. I've never confirmed whether it was true or not, but I've always liked that. That he said, let's come together and work things out. And at least while I was there, he was a much better governor than I anticipated. Now, those are my biases, not necessarily reflective of anybody else's or should, but we are all human. Um,
Yeah, and I do feel that people would be pleasantly surprised at the number of people on both sides of the aisle who are really in government to do good. Most of them are. Some of them get in there and they have either a very strong ambition or a really uh, hateful sort of bent on crushing a certain point of view. But for the most part, I mean, the people I've met over 20 years at the State House are good people. I mean, they have honest policy disagreements, and they work hard, and they actually even get together and they have baseball leagues and parties and happy hours together, even though they're from different points of view. So it's not as divided as maybe people have the perception it is.
I'm heartened to hear that. Um, and maybe in the last 3 or 4 years, I've heard more than I remember hearing before about journalism as the fourth estate and really the fourth pillar of any democracy. And you are doing really important work. So first of all, thank you. And I'm sure you feel a great responsibility in what you're doing. I was wondering if you could tell folks in the congregation about how you approach your job.
Yes, I think that it is a great responsibility. It really doesn't change as political environments change. I mean, the basis of it being that we're going to try to be fair, balanced, accurate. We're going to try to be fast and get the news out to you as fast as we can, but um, not without making sure it's verified and that we have all the facts. I guess the way I look at it is just that it's a mission, it's a role within the United States, well, other countries and democracies too, but it's a piece, it's that fourth leg of accountability of the people that you're dealing with. And, I focus my time on, sometimes I'll say like, The Democrats might introduce a bill. If they're in a strong minority, that might not be news because that bill is not going to become law. You know, if you have a bill that's very interesting or strange, that's coming from the majority party, strange, or I guess we just call it newsworthy, then I'm going to write that story because it might go somewhere. On the other hand, I'm also here to be a voice to the voiceless. So at times when a minority party has an idea that is trying to benefit the whole society, then those kind of things get our attention and our coverage. And then, of course, we try to hold people accountable for hypocrisy and inaccuracy. And that has been a really, really hard and busy job in recent years.
I can only imagine, all this talk of fake news and such. And other presidents I have heard called Teflon President, and I don't think that comes close to what we've experienced in the last several years. How do you do that? And I know there's no guarantee, but how do you say, hey, folks, this is really important?
Well, the nature of what we choose to cover sort of gets at that, but it's been more difficult with Donald Trump because he's the leader of the free world, and we have to cover him even when he's not telling the truth. You've all heard about how we have to we all have to present his briefings, for example, even as we're fact checking them. So, and even as he is insulting and criticizing us for doing our job. So it's been, in my long career, I actually started as a journalist right out of college in 1980 something. I've never been so attacked on a personal level. I covered a Trump rally at Port Columbus during the campaign in 2016. And, he literally points at the journalists and says, look at those people back there. They're despicable. They're evil, and people turn and look at you. And the woman kind of pointed at me like, you? And I went, yep. And again, I just have to assume that humans are humans and that they see that we're human too, at some level.
So how do you keep your spirits up? That is a impersonal personal attack.
Well, besides wine.
All right, fair enough.
We have a great camaraderie in the press corps. I have a group of women journalist friends, and we try to get together, and we've even gotten together via Zoom in the crisis, and we just hash things out and talk about our jobs. And of course, I have my wonderful friends at church, and a big part of what I do is disconnect from it, and I know that a lot of journalists don't, but for me, disconnecting and being able to sing choral music, or being able to spend time with friends, or, my husband and I like to go to a lot of movies and just go out and hear music, and we just try to disconnect from it when we can, because it's a barrage, and I recommend to any political junkie that you just try to disconnect sometimes. Even if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And for myself, I know that there are times when I can absorb more news than others. And, I think at this time, there's so much information. People are at home, some people have lost jobs. Actually, quite a few people have lost jobs. There's a general anxiety because more and more of us now are knowing people who are coming down with COVID-19. And I hope I am wrong, but I expect that will continue, although the pace may slow a little bit. It may pick up again. So I guess this is an impossible question. I like those the most. What would you say to people about how to pay attention to what's most important right now? There's so much that's important, I think.
Right. Well, I think that you have to find a reliable news outlet or more than one. You know, obviously, the Associated Press is very neutral and unbiased. Also, mainstream papers like the Dispatch and the the main papers in the state, the Plain Dealer and the Inquirer, and those for Ohio news, and NPR is a neutral source. But then also, try to what AP is actually even trying to do for our own sanity is we have something called One Good Thing, and in the midst of our coronavirus report, which you're right, it has sometimes 30 stories in one day. Nobody can read all that. Pick the stuff that you feel you need to know, or that is going to help you understand it, and then listen to the experts. I actually think that DeWine and Dr. Amy Acton are doing a pretty good job of just trying to keep the facts out there and be as transparent as they can about what's happening. And there are charts out there you can find that'll show you whether your source, it's fine to look at a source that is coming from a perspective, whether it's right or left, that is also giving you facts, but from a particular point of view. That's absolutely fine. But you just want to steer clear of, well, the way I look at cable news is sort of the two sides fighting right before your eyes. It's not journalism like I do journalism. It's a point of view that is, then I would take both those sides and put them into a neutral story where you can get the two sides side by side. We try not to filter too much out, but at the same time, be responsible about what the content is. And so, I think, and right now it's so important, if you believe in the role of journalism and journalists, and you disbelieve that news is fake, that comes from an organization like mine, subscribe to your paper, support local journalism that way, because it's, we all, everybody's community news organization is fueling the entire health of the profession.
Let me ask you another impossible question. This is not one on my list that I showed you before we started recording. I don't remember if it was a political science professor in my undergraduate days. I know it certainly came up in my time in seminary, and I've been very aware for years that, we talk about being citizens of the society and more than just consumers, which I think is an important enough distinction. But we also talk about, the rights that we have. Well, with rights comes responsibility. Now, here's my political. How do you start promoting more personal responsibility? I mean, I can preach to the choir, but that's important. I don't want to diminish that. We need to keep our own selves clear. But how do you preach outside to? And you're not a preacher, but how do we instill a sense of the importance of personal responsibility?
Well, that's interesting you brought that up, because last night I was finishing up a story and I quoted the League of Women Voters, and they were talking about, if people care about the election that's coming up and they want certain changes, write to your representative, write to your senator, and remember, which not everybody does, that we actually do have a state government. That's what I cover. But, a lot of people, amazing percentage of people, actually don't quite understand the difference between the Congress in Washington and the House and Senate that sit down at Broad and High at the State House. And so, I do believe that it matters when you come out and you either protest, or you write a letter, or you attend a hearing. And many in our church I know are very, very active in in that way. But I think I think we have to share the information, and maybe this is sort of a teachable moment, because to me, the Trump administration has been a eye-opening experience to the entire country of how the government works, or is supposed to work, or doesn't work. And I think a lot more people are like, oh, I didn't know. The Washington Post, I think it is, the Washington Post has a podcast that's actually called Can He Do That? And it's very informative, because it'll be things like, oh, can he run the White House from Mar-a-Lago? oh, can he, and it's been really interesting. So I recommend going back to that podcast if you haven't heard
Oh,
it.
I will look for that. I will look for that.
Yeah.
You said Washington Post?
Yeah, it's called Can He Do That? And AP has a great podcast now called Ground Game, which is just all about the coronavirus and different things happening in each state on the fight on the response. So, yeah, I mean, I think that being informed is really important. But the interesting thing is that even if you're not informed, you still have a vote.
Yeah.
So, that can be discouraging, but it also means that is on the people with the information to get it out as best they can so people can participate in an informed way.
Yeah, yeah. Julie, thank you. We've gone well beyond the time I anticipated this. I told you that I'd be asking you. Do you have any closing thoughts for folks in the church today?
No, just I miss you all, and I really am flattered and honored that you asked me to be on here to talk about my job.
My pleasure. The staff had, we have conference calls at least 3 times a week, and we were saying, we miss hearing from our choirs, and we don't know what exactly to do about that yet. So we miss hearing from you, your singing voice. Thank you for sharing your wisdom from your professional and personal voice this morning. I really appreciate it, Julie. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.